Hi guys, my name is Triya and I am a junior doctor working in London. I went to Oxford Medical School from 2016 to 2022 and I have just finished my first year as a junior doctor and I am starting my second year, which is called FY2. So today I'm going to be talking about medical work experience. I'll be talking about how to get work experience, what type to do, and how to make the most of it. I hope you find this video useful and let's get into it. I thought I'd start by talking about the different types of work experience that you can do as a prospective medical student. The most obvious type of work experience you can do is clinical work experience, and by that I mean by shadowing a doctor in a hospital or a GP practice. This is a really good type of work experience because you can see the day-to-day life of a doctor and you can put yourself in their shoes and see what you'll be doing during your job as well. You will also get to interact with patients and come across various diseases. The less obvious type of work experience, but equally important, is work experience in a caring role that is not necessarily in the hospital. And for example, this could be working in a care home or a nursery or a school. Although it's not clinical, it's really important because you can work on the caring aspect of the job, which is obviously a huge part of being a doctor, being able to talk to patients in need and being able to empathize and being a reassuring presence in their lives. So the types of work experience that I've mentioned so far have been voluntary. Obviously, paid jobs can also be really good work experience for medical school. For example, this could be working in a shop or working at a pharmacy. And the aspect of the job that is the most useful is the service aspect, and that's interacting with people of all different types of ages and backgrounds. And obviously, that is also a huge part of being a doctor. So now I'll talk about why work experience is actually important as a prospective medical student. I always tell this to people who ask me about work experience. The most important goal of work experience is for you to actually decide whether you want to be a doctor. But this isn't a decision that you should take lightly because it is 6 years of medical school plus several years of training and postgraduate exams. As I'm sure you've heard on the news, there are issues surrounding pay and the current state of the NHS. So levels of burnout and stress are very, very high at the moment. So it's a decision that you shouldn't take lightly and that you need to consider very thoroughly. One of the good ways of doing that is going to work experience in hospital and talking to doctors and getting their honest opinions about what it's really like to work as a doctor. Also, when you're doing these work experience placements, you can ask yourself whether you see yourself in a hospital and in a caring environment and whether that's something that you think you might enjoy. Obviously, as a doctor, you don't necessarily have to always work in a hospital. For example, GPs don't always work in hospitals. However, you have to remember that for some years you will have to work in a hospital in order to complete your traditional training in the UK. Another reason to do work experience is to show your commitment to medical school and your commitment to being a doctor. It's even better if you've done what I've said and you've spoken to doctors about what it's like, because you can show that you are a serious applicant who has considered the pros and the cons of being a doctor. Now I'm going to talk about how to actually get work experience. It's important to remember that interviewers at medical school are usually doctors or professors, and they understand how difficult it is to get work experience in the UK, especially in hospital settings and especially after the pandemic. So they will be very understanding if you haven't managed to get the traditional work experience shadowing a doctor in a hospital. It's more if you have shown that you've made an effort and you've made the most of the opportunities that you have had. So one of the most common ways of getting work experience, and I don't think it's talked about enough, is utilizing your personal contacts. So that's whether you have parents in the medical industry or you have neighbours, friends, teachers, that kind of thing. So for example, I had a year 11 student working with me the other day in my obs and gynae placement who was neighbours with my consultant. So that's how she got her work experience. That being said, obviously a lot of people won't have medics in the family and won't know anyone, so there are definitely other routes available. However, if you are lucky enough to have contacts, then definitely don't be shy and don't be afraid to ask them. And generally people are really approachable and they will want to help you if they know that you're interested in their profession, because that's only natural. Another thing is to ask your school if they have any volunteering or work experience contacts. For example, in my school, we had a local nursery that was just down the road that our school students often went to. So when I was in year 10 and I was looking for a volunteering role, I asked the school guidance counsellor to help me. Also, your teachers may have doctors who are in their family or in their contacts. That's also another avenue to explore. Another thing to do is to look online for more structured work experience placements. So for example, when I was in year 12, I looked online for care homes that were in the city that I live in, and I found one that did a year 12 summer work experience placement that lasted 2 weeks. In order to get that placement, you had to write a personal statement and do an interview with the manager of the care home, and then you'd get selected. So this is a more official process. If there are schemes available like that near you, then I would definitely urge you to apply for them. Another thing you can do is go on the contact page of different care homes and things like that and email the people that work there saying that you're a prospective medical student and you're looking for work experience. My advice would be to make a short CV with your GCSE grades and your interests and write a short cover letter that you can just send to various people. The key thing is to persevere and to start early so that you have time and you have options. I will say though that often in medical school interviews, the interviewers will ask you how you got your work experience. So it's really important to be honest. For example, if you did get your work experience because you know someone, then you should say that. That's why it's really good if you've done more than one work experience placement, and let's say one you've got through your contacts and one you've got through a traditional interview process, you can then talk about them both so you don't appear like you've not made an effort. Okay, so that brings me to the topic of when is the best time to do work experience. Obviously for clinical attachments you have to be over 16, and I personally think that the best time to do work experience is in the summer after your GCSEs. So that's when you are just about to start your A-levels. I think this is a really good time because it's when you are thinking about your A-level choices and you are thinking about your career, and also because you've just finished exams, you won't have a lot of academic pressure. I think that doing work experience during your A-levels and during the following summer just before your applications is good, but also you'll have a lot of other commitments such as your A-levels, your entrance exams, and preparing for your medical school interview. So getting work experience done early, if you can, is really good. Another thing that medical schools often like is when you show that you've had a long-term commitment in a caring role. So this can be volunteering for a year at a charity shop or at a care home. So in year 10, I used to volunteer at a nursery once a week after school, and it was literally just playing with kids once a week, but I had experiences that I could talk about in my interviews, and it showed that I was dedicated to a caring profession. So what work experience did I do? Like I said, when I was in year 10, when I was about 14 or 15, I obviously couldn't do clinical work experience yet, but what I did was I volunteered at a nursery playing with kids, and I also volunteered to teach maths and English to year 3, so they're about 6, 7, 8 years old, at the local primary school, which was literally just next to the school that I went to. It was a very low commitment volunteering job, but it was a good start. When I was 16, in the summer after my GCSEs, I then did a 1-week placement in a local hospital in the obstetrics and gynecology department, and I got this through a contact of my parents. This was a clinical placement where I shadowed various junior doctors and I went to clinics and saw babies being born. It was really exciting and it helped me to confirm my decision to study medicine. Then the following year, in year 12, so the summer after my AS level exams when I was about 17, I did a 2-week voluntary program in a care home that was in the city that I lived in, and this was really good because I got to take part in activity classes and speak to the residents about their experiences and speak to the care home staff. So I got a lot of insights that I then used in my personal statement, which I will read to you in a minute. On top of that, I also did some work experience in a completely unrelated field. So I applied to something called Head Start, which was a program for science students to go to a university and get the experience of being a student in a particular field and what it would be like to work in that field. So I went to a Head Start course for material science in Oxford, and at the time I was still debating between studying medicine or physics at the time in university. And that course, although it was interesting, it did help me to decide that I didn't want to study physics because I thought it lacked the direct relevance to human beings and the daily interaction with people that medicine gives you. That's something that I really crave and I actually really enjoy to this day as a doctor. Now I'm going to tell you how to make the most of your work experience and to really make those days count, and also how you can then use those experiences to help your application to medical school. So one thing I always tell people to do is to make sure you write a diary and a reflective log of your experiences. So what I used to do was take a physical journal and write every day after my work experience. I would write what I saw, what conditions people had, any interesting conversations or dilemmas that came up during the day. And the importance of this was that obviously I started doing work experience when I was 16 and my interviews were 2 years later for medical school, and I would have definitely forgotten the nuances if I hadn't written them down. Another way to make the most of your work experience is to talk to as many people as you can. I would talk to all the doctors that you interact with, ask them whether they like their jobs, ask them what they like the most about their jobs, what they don't like about their jobs, ask them about their career paths, because it's really surprising and interesting to see how many different routes there are into medicine and how different people's lives are. I would also try to talk to people from different professions, such as nurses, pharmacists, midwives, anyone that you can really meet, ask them about their jobs as well. And the reason I say this is because you want to be a doctor. However, sometimes medical interviewers will ask you, why do you want to be a doctor and not a nurse? And in order to consider this, you can say, oh, well, I've spoken to a nurse about their job. It just makes you seem like you are a very considered and balanced person. So now I'm going to read you some sentences from my personal statement that were about my work experience and my volunteering. Here's something that I wrote about work experience. So I wrote, during my time at Luton Hospital, I saw that while conflicts of opinion between doctors and patients can be frustrating, it is vital to ensure that patients' views and aspirations remain central in making decisions about their care. Then I wrote, being a doctor would not only allow me to consider what is best for individual patients, but will also provide me with the opportunity to explore scientific questions through research. Then I went on to write about my volunteering experience. I then wrote, my weekly volunteering sessions at a care home has taught me that patience and kindness are key in reaching out to vulnerable patients. I have thought carefully about entering a caring profession, engaging the residents in conversation and making small but important differences to their day helped me to confirm my decision. In these sentences, I essentially showed that I have a long-term commitment to a caring profession and that I have considered what it takes to be a doctor, and I have also seen that during my placement, and I have thought about some problems and conflicts that could arise. Other things that you can write about to be relevant include things like technological advances in healthcare, such as the importance of AI or the impact of the pandemic. So that was a brief introduction into work experience. I hope that was useful. Work experience and volunteering are vital parts of your medical school application, so I really hope that this gave you some tips. Thank you so much for watching my video, and I will see you in the next one.